Welcome to episode 9 of our Break the Isolation webinar series. Today's topic is Music in Times of Crisis with Benjamin Northey. Before we begin, we would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and recognise their continuing connection to land, waters and community. We pay our respects to them and their cultures and to elders both past and present. Thank you everyone for joining us today. This webinar series aims to bring together our community, keep us connected and share creative ideas during these challenging times. Please do get involved with the chat function, which is a little speech bubble at the bottom of your Zoom screen. You can share comments and ideas with your fellow attendees, and we'll put aside some time at the end to answer any questions we don't manage to address along the way. My name's Michelle Forbes. I'm the State Manager for AMEB Tasmania, and I'm so excited to have with me today one of Australia's most engaging and delightful conductors in Benjamin Northey, and we'll get to hear his thoughts on music in times of crisis. Ben is the Chief Conductor of the Christchurch Symphony Orchestra and also the Principal Conductor in Residence with the Melbourne Symphony Orchestra at the moment. He has worked with pretty much every orchestra around the country and plenty overseas, and his artist collaboration list reads like a veritable who's who of the coolest artists I can think of. Thank you so much for joining us, Ben, and welcome.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Michelle. Thanks for having me. Big thank you to AMEB for organising this.
Wonderful to have you. So how are you? What are you up to in isolation? What are you working on?
Oh, look, I'm fine. I mean, I feel like the population's divided into various groups who are experiencing this in different ways. There are the people who have a job and things to do. There are people like myself whose job has just evaporated suddenly. And then there are other people who are at home with kids, and I'm sort of in that category as well. So we've got an 8-year-old daughter and a 6-year-old son, Eva and Leo. They're home remote schooling. And that's a very hands-on experience, as I'm sure everybody can relate to. It's been wonderful, though. This is a rare opportunity for me to spend some time at home for a long stretch because I'm traveling so much normally for my job. Like last year, I was away for 7 months, I think, of the year, over the course of the year. And so that's been great. I mean, this is a rare opportunity to just have that time together. And, you know, little jobs are starting to trickle in, these kinds of things, webinars, interviews, but also some online collaborative musical projects, which is very interesting as well. So that's all starting to happen. But it's been a very surreal experience for me, as I'm sure it has for everybody out there.
For sure. And we're all kind of figuring out our way as we go, aren't we? Tell us about those new projects, if you can.
Yeah, well, there's a couple of things. I mean, I'm sure many of you have seen the performances that have been happening online. Those tiled performances, choirs singing, everybody recording their individual parts at home and that kind of thing. That's starting to become a thing that orchestras are doing, and even youth orchestras, universities, trying to work out ways to remain connected with their musicians, with their audiences, with students. So I actually feel like there's sort of two aspects to that. There's the sort of presentation of an outcome where you show that you're doing something, and, you know, in spite of the fact that you can't get together and have a rehearsal or a concert, you can still make some music and remain connected and provide people with something to listen to and to look at and marvel at the wonders of modern technology. But there's also the pedagogical aspect of that, because you know, for example, Monash University contacted me last week. They're really keen to put together an online sort of rehearsal process and performance of a movement of a Beethoven symphony. Everyone's talking about Beethoven this year being his 250th birthday. And so, you know, that got me thinking about the processes around people learning through a kind of online masterclass environment. And there are huge upsides to that. I mean, I can stand in front of an orchestra rehearsal at a university or a youth orchestra, and I can speak to them as a group. I can isolate sections, and I can work on things together. But that one-on-one ensemble learning, that's quite rare. And that's an opportunity that this situation provides. You can actually have an experience one-on-one with a student where you're talking about ensemble playing. You might have an expert demonstrating a part of a symphony, for example, and then they incorporate all of that learning into their recording, and then you compile everything at the end. So I think there's opportunities for that more individual teaching of ensemble skills, for sure. That's what I'm noticing anyway.
It's so great to find the silver linings in all of these challenges. And you've kind of been through this before. You were obviously, as in your role with the Christchurch Symphony Orchestra and the massive earthquakes they experienced. What were their sort of reactions, and how did they connect with the community through that?
Yeah, look, it's fascinating. And these are very different kinds of events in many ways. I mean, the scale of this obviously is brand new and something we've never experienced in our lifetimes. The earthquakes in 2011 in Christchurch were immediately worse because no water, no power, buildings fallen, all of that kind of thing. So in terms of their kind of journey, they had to face an immediate crisis of just everything stopped. They were unable to do anything. However, the orchestra made a decision at that point in time to put on a concert that week, which I think they cancelled maybe one performance, but then the following day they were able to find a temporary venue and just do a concert for a handful of people, you know, and the musicians made that decision to keep going. That's different because we can't do that now. So, I mean, that's the extraordinary thing about the Christchurch situation was over time, the orchestra just kept on finding ways to perform and ways to bring the community together and give people the experience of live music. They found temporary venues. You know, they picked repertoire that was small enough in size to fit in certain places, and they became a kind of a symbol of the resilience and the spirit of that community, and that has endured. And so the orchestra now is in a really strong position compared to what it was before the earthquake, because it's completely reinvented itself. We've got quadrupled audience numbers since that earthquake. We have investment across a number of levels of government to help us with our community outreach and engagement program. So, and that's another aspect that I think is going to be important for us in this time, is kind of refocusing music away from always thinking about the big performances and thinking about more smaller scale activities, which is what we're really limited to now. So I think Christchurch has been really instructive for me. And it gives me a lot of hope because I saw how much music meant to people in that time of crisis. And the same thing apparently happened in New York after 9/11. You know, people desperately crave the might be escapism that art gives them, or distraction, but really it's solace, and it's that sort of connection with being human and sharing feelings and emotions and experiencing beauty and all of those things that art can do. And so I think Christchurch has definitely proven that even though now it's hard to see, when we get to the point where we can perform more, music will be more important than ever.
There certainly is that incredibly important benefit to be had through that social cohesion and shared experience, and music of all the arts is one of the strongest in that area, as we know. But can you tell me a little bit about those smaller projects that you did, and sort of how that kind of couples with the model at the moment of artistic excellence and what some people kind of describe as self-indulgent programming?
Oh yeah, look, it's not really a kind of trade-off of things. What I would say is that you have to respond to the needs of your community and your audience. And that's really, all arts organizations are constantly doing that all the time. And those needs change. So, for example, an orchestra, we can cater for such a wide range of different audiences through different kinds of programming, different kinds of projects, from, you know, the film and orchestra projects to our main stage classical subscription concerts, education, all of these things. The thing I noticed in Christchurch was the orchestra made a conscious decision to do more community outreach projects. And that was not just education, that was schools working with members of the disabled community, low socioeconomic members of the community, prisons, old people's homes, medical facility, all kinds of things. And what they realized was that as soon as people understood that this was something that the orchestra offered, we were just inundated with requests for these kinds of small scale, normally interactive experiences. It's not just turning up and playing a concert. It might be doing a dance collaboration, with the disabled people. There's all kinds of possibilities to try and reach out to people and give them the experience of what the orchestra can offer. And so that just became a huge part of the business. I mean, I think 50% of our activity is in education and community outreach in Christchurch, which is absolutely wonderful. And it's a different structure for the players because, they are auditioned, they're interviewed, they're asked about how they feel about working in that space. And for some of them, that's their dream job. They want to be able to play in the orchestra, but they also want to be able to work in that space as well. And so I think you'll find as we sort of make this recovery back to something resembling normal concert giving, which could be a long period of time, we will find ourselves doing more smaller scale projects, and it'll require us to just really think about where those are best targeted and who's going to get the most out of those things. I think that's the key. It's the need-driven delivery of what we do, rather than what we might, just want to do in a big concert situation. We have to really think about what is the tangible outcome for the audience, for the community.
Right. It sounds like there's a lot of potential for music to become the medium to help in the recovery of this situation, which is really exciting. A quick question from one of our viewers. It's really empowering to hear the CSO stories, and thank you for that and the comparisons to this crisis. How do you think the focus might shift in the orchestral community while international travels are pretty much non-existent, and even potentially after we're able to continue with those?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So nobody really knows what the travel restrictions will be for the next, 12 to 18 months, but it seems that it'll be much more difficult to travel and have visiting artists, for example. On the one hand, that's a shame. We love having visiting artists here and experiencing the best of the international talent available. But again, it provides an opportunity for Australian artists. It provides an opportunity for us to really connect with some Australian artists that we might not have seen that much of over the years. I think that'll probably be something that happens in a lot of different countries as it becomes more difficult to move around. We'll end up celebrating the talent that we have, and it could be a very busy year for Australian artists, and that would be a wonderful outcome in many ways. I think there'd be a lot of richness to find and discover and share, and it speaks to the opportunity for young people learning music and studying music and coming through professionally. As we know, I'm preaching to the converted, but we have an abundance of talent here. I mean, it's just an incredible amount of talent, great teaching, great facilities, resources, wonderful artists. And this is a chance to really put the focus onto them and to really celebrate them.
Absolutely right, and so much potential to enrich those connections as well. You mentioned young artists there. I can imagine a lot of people at the moment who are studying music or thinking about a career in the arts might be thinking, what am I even doing here right now? Will there be a job for me? Will audiences be turning up for concerts? What would you say to these young musicians?
Yeah, this is a really important point, is you can't lose hope in a situation like this. And for the reasons that I've talked about in relation to Christchurch, that demonstrates the need for what music brings people. Now, that won't change. The way that we are able to connect with people might change, but we're very adaptable humans. We work it out, and we're working it out now. We're still able to use the extraordinary resource of online concerts and being able to connect with people through social media even. And we're all going to be technical gurus by the end of this, more than even we are now. I mean, look at ABC Classic. So their audience numbers have gone through the roof during this, and I suppose there are more people at home, but they are turning on classical music. They're turning on music generally, and that's a really good sign. The other thing that I remember hearing, I think it was from you guys the other day, was about the sales of musical instruments at home. So there's this explosion of people reconnecting with their piano or learning a new instrument. you know, pianos have sold out, like the one behind me, portable piano. You know, that's a great indicator of the fact that there's a huge appetite for music and the arts. That's not going to change. That's only going to grow. And over time, the more things that we're able to do, the more activity there'll be. So I would encourage young people, use the time to keep developing, keep practicing, keep expanding your artistic horizons. And it won't be long before you're able to really share that in a meaningful way with many, many people.
Terrific. Thank you so much. That's really important advice, and, you know, stay strong, stay positive. We've actually had a couple of questions come through, so I might just go back to one of those. Particularly around technology, what do you use in bringing ensembles together? What sort of platform? Is it Zoom? Do you find that you've got a different option there?
Yeah, look, I'm somebody who hasn't yet done an online rehearsal. Now, that explodes my mind to think how that's possible. I have heard that teachers are doing that, and hats off to you, because I can't imagine the difficulty of that. So I'm not really an expert in how that would be structured. The one thing that I would say is the kind of projects that I'm being asked to work on now, which I'm just starting to work on and learning about the best ways to do them, it's more about, you know, if you pick a piece of music, working out how then you provide a kind of a bed for people to play their part on top of. That's the thing that we're working out, whether that is a digital reconstruction of the piece with a click track that enables people to you know, synchronize in that way, or whether you record a small group of live musicians as the bed of that, like a string quintet or something like that, and then the rest of the instruments are recorded individually at home on top of that, and finally it's all mixed together. So really, that, you know, that's kind of an outcomes-driven project, looking at putting something together. But that pedagogical process is what interests me much more, in terms of you know, providing, even if it's a video masterclass on a you know, the way to play a certain piece of music, and then being able to interact with the student with questions. I think that's really, really important, and that's what's much more interesting about that process. So but Zoom, I'm sure it's what everybody's using. I just don't quite understand how you get a big group of people playing instruments in real time, but maybe it's possible. Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed that's not too far off. In terms of the process, do you think that rehearsals and performances, as we will continue to see them in the future, do you think that they will have changed? And if so, how do you feel about that?
Well, look, I've been thinking about what it is we miss about the musical experience of a concert. And really, it's the shared experience. It's the fact that we love being together, because otherwise we just sit at home and play CDs, or in the olden days we had CDs, you know, put on you know, iTunes or whatever. But really, that's what makes live music really special. And there's no doubt that communal shared experience of a performance is the key to what makes music magical. It's sitting there, seeing somebody create music, being able to feel the emotions of that and share it with others. And so that's the difference with online. You can share, because music is a uniter. Music brings people together. You can still do that online. And for example, in the comments, that's really where the richness is, because you can actually in real time be engaging with people and sharing your reactions to a musical performance. I mean, that's what makes it really, really special. And that's replacing the feeling of being at a concert and being able to afterwards talk about it with friends and that kind of thing. I mean, we're going to be seeing, no doubt, smaller audience numbers. We're going to have to spread people out. Public safety is going to drive all of these decisions. The orchestra will be spread out on stage, probably, you know, with this 1.5 metre rule, or however many people per square metre that we're allowed to have on stage. Don't know how that's going to affect rehearsals until we start. You know, we're just not in a position to get together yet, so we have to wait and see.
Another question from our audience, and probably a tricky one to answer, but we'll give it a go. Restrictions are starting to lift, and it's a little bit of crystal ball gazing, but do you have a sense of when, we might be able to return to the concert hall?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Look, I always sort of look at economics as well as a factor in this. So, assuming things are mapped out and they remain, JobKeeper and these kinds of programs to help people, they end at the end of September, right? So I'm imagining that there's going to be an imperative in October, November, later in the year that will have to be able to do something. I just don't quite know exactly what that is. It'll depend on the limits on gatherings and all of that kind of thing. But really, I remember when the restrictions were introduced, they went to 500, then they went to 100, and then they went to 20, 10, 2, and just it became impossible in a matter of days to even, get together. So I think the 500 is going to be the last one of those that we reach. And that could be next year. That could be late this year. I don't think it's going to be anytime in the middle of this year, I wouldn't have thought. So it's still a bit of time to go. But who knows? Things can change. And the other thing is we just have to adapt. Maybe outdoor concerts are going to be more practical as the weather improves. We've got wonderful outdoor venues. There might be better possibilities to socially distance audiences and orchestras on, for example, the big stage at the Maya Music Bowl, or wherever there's a good outdoor space around the country. So we'll find new ways. This is what I'm talking about with human beings are very, very adaptable. We just work it out. And I'm sure that'll happen with concerts as well.
This probably you've just answered, but my next question was going to be, what does the future look like for orchestras? Was there anything else that you wanted to add beyond those fantastic points?
Look, I guess it's really, it's just going to distill what's important about what we do. I think that's probably the key for everything, because this has made us work out what it is that's really important to us. And, there won't be the sort of room, if there was any, for, as you mentioned before, about self-indulgence or decoration and pretension, these things. I think that's now gone. Like, it's just the essence of what we do is important. And so, we have to think very, very seriously about what kind of music we choose to play. The celebration, as I talked about before, of Australian artists, that's going to be really important, I think, giving opportunities to artists and composers and all of these things, but just making sure we connect very directly with people. I mean, in Christchurch, we used the themes around the rebuild, around resilience, around hope, of recovery, but even sorrow, of expressing the things that we feel. We did a lot of kind of musical, for want of a better word, therapy, in a sense, because we were addressing the things that people were feeling. And that's what we have to think about, I think, in all of the arts, but particularly in music.
So true. A couple of questions that have come through that might actually fit in nicely together. One was around how you continue personally your own conducting development, and how it's a bit of a mystery for a lot of people who don't know much about this topic. And if you've got an instrument, you practice that, you do your scales, we know how that works. But as a conductor, are you learning new repertoire? How do you keep your skills up? How does that work for you? It's
very difficult because, I've had, about 8 or 9 programs cancelled so far, right? Well, they're just cancelled forever, but it's hard to know what the first one is going to be that I get to do. And so it's difficult to study in that way. It's yes, it's the perfect chance, remote learning aside, it's the perfect chance to learn some new repertoire and to have time, which is the one thing that when you're very busy, and all of us are very busy, it prohibits the things that you can really, sink your teeth into and learn something new. So I'm finding it hard to know what to concentrate on. That's the truth. And now it's good that there's a few of these projects, the online orchestral projects and things that I can actually just focus on and sink my teeth into, because I'm so used to just working to a project, and that's the difficulty. So You still can study, of course. You still can practice your technical craft as a conductor. It's like an instrument. You can practice to a certain extent. It's just that you can't stand in front of a group, which is what you really need to do to work it out. So that makes it hard. But there are certain physical exercises and things around the coordination of the hands and your beating patterns and techniques that you can certainly still be practicing. You might choose to learn, brush up on your oral training, your score reading, instrumental playing, anything. I mean, there's just an endless amount of things that you can devote your energies to.
Sometimes it's about what to focus on first, isn't it?
Yeah.
In terms of you mentioned before the different pedagogical approaches that we're developing in teaching online and one-on-one development as opposed to one-to-many. Do you think there are some of those things that we can take away to continue to use in our sort of pedagogical arsenal after we reconnect?
Yeah, I wonder about students recording a performance and sending it to someone for analysis. Now, I mean, we would normally just call that a masterclass, and normally it would be done in real time, but it doesn't necessarily have to be, actually. And I think from a public presentation point of view, it's a really good skill for musicians to be able to record themselves visually and sonically in really great quality. And so that's something that everybody's sort of having to upskill to. And I think, when I talked to the people at Monash University about this, they were talking about that too. The students have had to work out and learn very quickly how to be able to do that. And if we're talking about a paradigm shift in the way we deliver our art form digitally, then everybody's going to need to do it at the highest quality and at the highest level. And that would be my great fear, is that just by the nature of the internet, we kind of are relegated to having this slightly pixelated, bad audio version of ourselves. And you can still record yourself in broadcast quality on an iPhone, is the truth. And maybe you need to attach a microphone or something like that to get really good audio. But to send that to a professional, and the orchestras around the world have all of these people doing nothing right now, you could send it to anybody, probably, and get feedback. I mean, I think that's a really great kind of, thing that can continue, that could endure beyond this. And many of these things will endure beyond this. Ensemble playing, it's possible, much harder, obviously. But you can still talk to people about ensemble playing, and you can give them a lot of ensemble skills as individuals. And that's the difference, I think. Rather than teaching a group, you just teach an individual.
We've had lots of questions come through. We've probably got time for another one or two. In terms of returning to work in a musician environment and having to be spaced 1.5 minutes apart or whatever that sort of ratio is, do you have any sort of suggestions, particularly for amateurs who might not feel confident with those different acoustics and how to work with the collective sound sort of swelling around them and being quite distant from their colleagues?
Yeah, I've heard different things about this. So, Berlin Philharmonic did a very small performance of a Mahler Symphony chamber version of that with about, I think, 12 or 15 players on stage. And they were spread out quite a lot. And a lot of them talked about the fact that they could hear themselves much better. And that was different. I mean, it was, ensemble playing, we all want to get close together and be able to lock in with each other. But again, it's just different. You just have to adapt and learn a different way to play. The conductor might become a bit more important as ensembles are really spread out. And of course, we did this performance of Beethoven 7 really at the end of the restriction, or the end of the beginning of the restrictions. Was back in March, and we were socially distanced for that. There was 1.5 meters between the string players. They were all using iPads and turning pages with their foot pedals and all this kind of thing. The French horns were in another postcode right up the back of the orchestra. And that was hard, it was difficult, but it was possible. And that ended up being a really rewarding performance. So it's probably going to be more difficult, but not impossible. That's the thing that I would say about spreading out on stage.
And do you think we'll see an increase in demands for new works or an increased output from composers after this time? And do you think the commissioning process will have changed at all in this process?
Oh, look, I'd like to think so. I mean, I'd like to think that there will be a renewed interest in connecting with our own stories, but supporting our composers, supporting our artists. And you know, if we're using many more Australian artists, that's just how it works. When you have people who know other composers and they're used to collaborating with them, that's just how the world works. You have your collaborators, and that they're usually the people that you know, and that's often in a country, your fellow country people. So I'm hoping that will happen. I have no doubt that it will. And what was the first part of the question? Sorry, Michelle.
Do you think we'll see more, and will the commissioning process change at all?
Oh yeah, it'll be very interesting to see. That's what I was going to say. The other thing that's really interesting is that there are some people for whom this pandemic has had no impact on at all in terms of they're working at home already isolated. I would put probably composers in that boat as well. This doesn't stop you composing music. In fact, I would probably say we're going to have an absolute explosion of new works ready to be rolled out and to play. And that's a wonderful thing. I mean, I've heard of commissioning programs that people have been contacting composers just to play something at home, and commissioning them to write something small, an etude or a little sonata or something like that. I mean, that would be wonderful if that ended up being something that people connected through sharing music, sharing works, and engaging with composers even more. So yeah, I'm very optimistic about that.
Terrific. Well, we have gone over time, but I just want to ask you one more thing. What excites you about the future?
Oh, look, I'm optimistic by nature. I know that this is going to be very, very challenging, but I do love the idea that we will be able to reinvent how we as musicians connect with people. I think there's going to be a reimagining that is filled with opportunity. There might be certain things that we change about what we do. We might find better ways to do things, and very, very different ways. I mean, if that Christchurch experience has taught me anything, it's that you can really improve what you do as a musician when you are challenged with adversity. That is very, very possible. Music is an extraordinary medium for social change, for improving people's lives, all of these things that we all know. And you know what? It's essential in people's lives. That's the truth. And as we work our way through this, we have the chance to prove that. That's our job.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Ben. I think that's all we do have time for, but it's been an absolute pleasure. At AMEB, the Australian Music Examinations Board, we are here to help. We're compiling lots of resources for teachers, students, parents, everyone we can, including our online theory of music courses, which are currently free until the end of June. Thank you all at home for joining us, and a particular thanks to Benjamin Northey for sharing your insights. It's been a pleasure to talk to you and hear from you today, and from all of us here at AMEB, we hope that you are well, stay musical, and stay connected.
Thanks so much, Michelle. Thanks, everybody.